don't know what we'll do. We stayed around, I guess, for 30 minutes trying to figure out, dug around with some sticks and no good. And Dad said, this is not going to do it, so we're just going to have to go. I said, no, Dad, I can't do that. Can't go and leave my dog. And I said, I'm not going. I said, I'll stay here. He said, you and my brother said, y'all can go, but I'm going to stay. And I couldn't stand the thought of him staying there in the ground all night long by himself. So I said, no, I'm going to stay. And he said, okay, I'll tell you what I'll do. He said, you stay here with Tippy, talk to him, and your brother and I'll go back and we'll get some diggers, post hole diggers and shovels and a pick, and we'll come back. And I said, I can't promise you anything, but we'll see if we can dig and get him out of there. So my brother and my dad left me there in that woods that night, dark woods, cold, in the middle of the night. The moon light didn't really get down in the woods because of the overgrowth of the trees, but they left me there with a coal oil kerosene lantern, one lantern, and me hearing my dog Tippy down in the ground. And I think that night I learned some bravery. Before that, if you had told me that I had to stay in the woods by myself, even with a lantern, at night, for any length of time, I couldn't have done it. But I think that night, knowing that Tippy was down in that hole and I wasn't going to leave Tippy, that I might have faced the old devil to have stayed in that woods that night. And I think it taught me a good lesson that sometimes you have to defeat your fears and do things that you need to do and go beyond your fears. So I had a good lesson there. But anyway, I stayed and nothing bad happened. And I don't think I was scared. I was more concerned about the little dog than I was my own self at that time. And I had terrible thoughts of what the results of this could be. My dad had already warned me that didn't know if it would do any good or not when he went off and got something to dig with. But anyway, they were gone a while and I heard them coming back. They had to walk quite a ways from where you could park the car down to where we were. But they found me back. They yelled out a time or two, and I yelled back, and they found where I was down in the woods and came back, and they had brought back shovels and pick, and I can't remember post hole diggers, anything to dig with. And my dad warned us, and my brother was older than I was, big enough to do a good bit of the digging. Of course, I tried to help out too, what I could, and Dad would dig. He said, there's danger in this for Tippy. He said, if we are not careful, said we'll knock dirt down in that hole and they'll smother. Said we've got to be very careful. So we have to dig so that we dig down where we think he is, and said there'll be roots and everything else down in there. And he said, I just don't know if we can do it or not, but we'll try. But we'll have to be careful and not knock any dirt down on top of him. So luckily, this was on a low area, and it was sort of damp, and I think it had rained some before, so I guess the dirt was softer. I know it was even a little bit muddy when you were walking around, so the dirt was softer than it normally would be, being late fall of the year when it's quite a bit of moisture in this area. So we started digging down, and I was scared to death. I can't remember how scared I was, but I was terribly scared. Just almost foreseeing the outcome before it got there. I had lost hope, I guess. But we dug, and I don't know how many hours they dug. It was hard digging, and had to chop old roots and cut old roots. But I kept listening. I could still hear my puppy, my dog, whimpering down in the ground. So I knew he was still alive. Didn't know what. Dad said he may be eat up. He said that sometimes a fox would get a dog cornered like that and scratch him and bite him. And he said, I don't know what condition he'll be when we get down to him. And that made it even worse. But we dug and dug, and it's been too many years ago, but I can't remember how deep we had to dig, but it was a good way down in the ground, several feet down in the ground. And my dad, in some of his other business, he had learned quite a bit about digging, and did a real good job about staying away from where the hole was and not getting any dirt on top of Tippy. I don't think we got any dirt or much dirt in on top of him. But he got down to a point and he said, I think what it is, he's down there hung under a root, And we finally dug down, and the roots got worse and worse down that area. And he finally got down in there, and he said, I think we're near where he is. And he and my brother got down with their hands at that time before he did it, would hit Tippy with the tools and started digging with their hands. And before long, he said, I think I feel him. He said, it's either him or the fox. I don't know which. And I just couldn't stand it. I was so excited. And he finally moved around more dirt and pulled around, and it took a long time to free him. But it was Tippy that he had dug down to. And it took a long time to free him and pull him out. And still, I didn't know what condition he was going to be in. Neither did my dad. And it was muddy down there in water, and you couldn't tell from the old kerosene light what condition he was in, and he was still whimpering and whining. But they pulled him out of that hole, out of those roots, and they had brought a blanket back with them. I had the blanket. They handed him up. Not a very big dog, a dog that a 12-year-old could carry, and I wrapped him up, and we carried him out of the woods back to the car, and still couldn't tell what condition he was in. Just didn't know, but I knew he was alive, and that's what meant a lot to me, that he was still alive. And we drove back to our house and took him inside, and you actually got him in where the light was, and you actually couldn't tell what kind of animal it was when you got him inside. He was covered with mud from head to toe. There wasn't a place on him that he wasn't muddy, just old dark brown mud. And he was an old brown dog anyway with white spots. And I guess that made it even worse. I think my mother got a pan of water, and we soaked him off and dried him off, and got a towel and dried him down good. And he was he was already reviving by that time. And we found after we cleaned him up, he had very little damage, a few little scars in the skin places, maybe a little bit of blood, but he was in pretty good shape. And I don't think I've ever been happier than that night when we got him back out of that hole and brought him home, got him cleaned up. And I think that night that Tippy became a house dog. He stayed in the house that night, as I remember. And that was real near Christmas, and that's my good Christmas story. And I don't remember even what I got as far as presents at Christmas, but I had my present there in that little puppy, and had him home, and he was healthy and safe, and that meant a whole lot. But there's more to the story. As Paul Harvey says, here's the rest of the story, and this is I guess more of a saga than just a story. But anyway, that was near Christmas, and we made it through Christmas. And at that time, and a lot of people would tell you this, in the 50s, and not just in this part of the country, but a lot of places, the weather was much colder and worse in the 50s than it is now. And it was true in our case here in northeast Alabama. It was true. It was a cold winter. We went through a cold winter. And Tippy and I were closer than ever those few months that between Christmas and up into the late part of the winter, almost to the spring. And also in those days, the weathermen, we hardly had TV, but the weathermen didn't have very good forecasting ability. Didn't have the equipment, didn't have the radars they have nowadays and things like that. So the forecast didn't really keep up. And they would try, but missed the forecast a whole lot. But anyway, it was in, I guess, early mid-March of the next year, after the Christmas story there, that we came in one night, and it was cold. Came in from school and got ready for bed. And you always go out and take care of the animals before you go to bed and things like that. And Tippy always stayed outside. He had a dog house, but we also had a big old barn he could stay in. We had sheds outside he could stay in, and things like that. Plenty of places to stay out of the weather, so we didn't worry about him a lot. But anyway, that night we came in and did our normal thing, got ready for the night, got the animals fed and put away, and got ourselves fed and put away, and everybody went to bed for the night. And early the next morning, my mother was up, and I could hear her in the kitchen, and I knew something was up. And she finally came in the bedroom and said, "Boys, get up and come and look outside. Come and look outside." So my brother and I hopped out of bed and ran over to the window, looked outside, and it had come the biggest snow that ever came in northeast Alabama the night before. Unexpected. Nobody even thought we were going to get a snow. And we came out with the biggest snow that North Alabama, I think, to this day has ever had. We had an old tractor at that time, and tractors are high up off the ground to go through the fields. And the only thing that would go through that snow was so deep that cars, you couldn't get a car out of the parking place, no way. And the only thing that would go through that snow, and it would scrub the bottom of the tractor, the belly of the tractor, was a tractor. And some of the smaller tractors would even go. So it was a very deep snow. I remember them saying it was 18 inches. That snow was 18 inches, deep snow. Of course, we were excited. North Alabama or Alabama southern children don't get big snows very often, so we were tickled to death to see the snow out there and wanted to get our clothes on and get out and play, and we did get out and had a time. Thought of all the forts we'd build and the snowmen we'd make, all the snowball battles we'd have. So we got out and started playing and played for a long time, stayed out in it, but all of a sudden I had the thought, where's Tippy? I haven't seen Tippy around. I didn't see any animals around. My brother said, don't worry about it. I said, animals are smart. They go to the barn. The cows and the pigs, everything go in the barn. And Tippy's probably in the barn, or he's under one of these sheds out here, and he'll be okay. They know how to take care of themselves. So we went back to playing and played up to midday, I guess, to lunch. And still no sign of, I had no animals out running around. Everything was snowed in, I suppose. But I got more concerned. I knew that it was lunchtime for us, and usually Tippy would come around and eat about the time we did. So I got real concerned, and I said, I barely could walk through the snow, but I'm going to walk down to the barn to see if I can see him. So I did that. I walked through the snow, walked down toward the barn, and looked inside, and sure enough, we had cow inside, and I think some pigs, and maybe some chickens, and cat, and whatever. I don't remember us having any other dogs besides Tippy. But anyway, got down there, and there was no Tippy in the barn, and that made it even worse. So my brother had come with me. He said, don't worry about it. He said, he's around somewhere, maybe under one of the smokehouse or the chicken house or some of the outbuildings. Said he's probably under there. But that worried me even more, because I knew the snow had come up high enough that if the animal had gone under those floors that he couldn't get back out, it might smother him there. So I went around to every building on the place and barns, and got colder than I should have, and calling and no answer. I dug holes so I could look back under the buildings, and there was no Tippy. Couldn't be found. Wasn't to be found. But anyway, my parents told me they wanted us to come inside and warm, and said, don't worry about it. Said he may have gone off to somebody else. Somebody else may have put him in their sheds, their barns. Said after the snow thaws, we'll get out and find him. He'll be okay. Reassuring me, But anyway, snow stayed on for a week. It might have been longer than a week. It was just cold, and it stayed on a long time. They finally had to bring road graders in. At that time, we lived on a dirt road, and before there could be any cars other than tractors over those roads, they had to bring road graders in and clear out the roads. And it took a week and a half. And they said, probably when it gets cleared up, we'll see Tippy. We'll find Tippy. But it wasn't to be. He was gone. And I don't know what happened to him. My parents said probably somebody came along and picked him up, and like it happened before, took him off with them, and he's living somewhere else. But I knew better, and I knew that was probably the end of Tippy. I was broken-hearted. I looked for him for months after that. A child will do, hoping for the best, but knowing the worst. But he never came back, and I know the snow, he got stranded out in that snow and probably froze. But I never did tell myself that as a child. But there's one part, and they'll make it a happy ending. Before that, Tippy had visited with one of my cousins. They had another little small dog, I think another little Feist. And after, on up in the early spring, we went to visit her one day, her family. And she said, I want you to come and see something. And what she wanted me to come and see was that her little female dog had puppies, Tippy's puppies. So I got to pick out another puppy and take home again for my dog. And I loved that little puppy too. I might have got two of them, I can't remember. But I loved that little dog. But not like I did Tippy. Tippy was my dog, and he's the only my dog I've ever had. But that's my Christmas story. I know I've drawn on for a long time, but I hope you enjoyed it. And I have a picture here that I want to show you of my dog Tippy. And right here he is. Let you get a good look at Tippy. He's doing one of his tricks there. He would stand up like that and beg for his favorite thing. And his favorite thing was homemade vanilla ice cream. So that's Tippy, and that's me standing there beside him with bare feet and my country blue jeans on. So that's my story. That's my Christmas story. Hope you enjoyed it.